Wednesday evening, everyone. And it's September. We are back and live. No more best ofs. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, Direct Line, our special guest is former Maryland State Delegate Trent Kittleman and candidate for County Board of Education in Howard County. Take it away, guys.
Is there a different announcement we need to know about? It's been a while, right? We're all brushing off the dust from the summer. Mark, it's great to be back with you. Trent.
Great to be back. Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a really exciting time to be running for Board of Education. So we're going to have a lot to talk about and get into the weeds about, I'm way more informed by what's going on in Montgomery County, but I'm sure it's just as bad in Howard County with the Baltimore City runoff. So it'll be interesting to get your take on what's going on.
So school board, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about when the race is. It's and how candidates are selected in Howard County.
Well, the election is next November, along with the presidential election, which will be a first for me, usually running in the gubernatorial years. And we have 2 board members who are elected at large. They were elected in the last gubernatorial election. The rest of the board, the other 5 members, are elected by district. And I'm running in my district, which is people I know and that I have represented for a while. But I talk about county executive. When I looked at the school board many moons ago, when I actually did run for county executive, I learned that the school board controls far more of our county's budget than the county executive does. And it's amazing to me how much power the school board does have. And in this time, I don't think there's anything more important, certainly nothing that parents are more concerned about than school board. And I've learned that just in the early days. And anybody can sign up to run. I think I'm the only one so far. I filed 2 or 3 months ago because I knew something I wanted to do.
So school board races are nonpartisan, and I say that in quotes, but everyone tends to know the political makeup of their school board members. Can you talk a little bit about where the current members stand, at least on the issues, if not in their voter registration?
Well, it's really interesting because I've been, watching the board and going to the meetings. And I have been actually more impressed than my initial what I thought I would see. And the issues have not been ones that break down on partisan lines. They have been pretty much business issues. And I have been pleased with some of the votes and some of the comments that the school board has made, at least as far as I've been watching. But there's still a lot to do. And I think one of the things that I could do that will help is having come from the state and knowing how the state operates and how the county operates, I think will be an asset.
One of the great challenges with school boards today seems to be this sort of philosophical chasm over some of the issues as to what's the role of parents and what are the roles of the professional educators and getting that balance right. What are your thoughts about that, and how does that shake out in Howard County?
I think that's probably the biggest issue there is. And parents are the guardians of their children. They're the ones that should be making most of the decisions. And unfortunately, it seems that in Maryland, the education is pretty much of a monopoly. There aren't a lot of choices, which is another story. I think, obviously, people have noted that COVID, one of the silver linings of an otherwise awful time, is that parents saw what was happening in the classroom because they were seeing it on the internet when their kids were at school. And they realized what was going on, and the kids were being taught things that they had no knowledge of. And the parents in our county are, not happy. They want to be able to have some say in what, they want to be able to have say in things that the parents should be having a say in, not having the school make the decisions and refusing to tell the parents what's going on in school. We passed a stupid law. I can't help myself. I think it was the last year I was there, which said that children who are 12 years old can have an appointment with a school counselor without notifying the parents. And I thought it was ridiculous when I first saw it, but unfortunately, ridiculous things pass these days. And that's not good. It really isn't. I know there will always be parents who aren't as attentive or as involved as everyone would like. But most of the parents are, and almost all parents love their children, want to do what's best for them, and being kept in the dark on things is just wrong.
So can you go into a little more detail about your time in the state legislature and the impact that the state legislature has over the schools and the school boards?
Very little. Like I said, the school system in this state is sort of a closed monopoly, primarily because of the teachers union. The state provides most of the money, the county, well, a lot of money, the county provides the rest of the money, but have very little say. The school system wants to spend it as they decide and wants to keep total control. Whenever there's a bill that would affect the curriculum, the system and the teachers union scream bloody murders. And no, we control the curriculum. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that Howard County has local control. That's good. Baltimore City is a totally different story, but it's hard to say that you have to pay and not have any say.
Mm-hmm. So the name Kittleman carries a lot of weight in Howard County, right, between you and your son. So has there been a lot of coverage of you announcing your run, or people with opinions? Because everyone's always got opinions.
I actually haven't done an official announcement. I've been telling people for a long time, hopefully to make sure nobody else decides to run, not knowing that I am. But I have noticed a big difference. Running for state delegate, people don't really know what delegates do. They're not that familiar, and the things that the state does don't directly affect them other than perhaps transportation. But since I've been running for school board, I get people just very passionate about it. Say, "Oh, you've got to win. What can I do to help?" And it's fun. I like that.
It's interesting. One of the issues that came up in the last session was this question of local control. And there was an effort, as I recall, by the
119. Yeah.
Yes, it was an effort to basically strip away some of the local responsibility, or a substantial part of the local responsibility. Fortunately, that was defeated. But what are your thoughts? Are we going to see more efforts on that? And what can be done to basically maintain the role of local school boards?
I think one of the biggest problems in Maryland is that we have Baltimore City, and then we have everyone else. And obviously there are other counties that have issues. But during my time in the legislature, I have spent a great deal of it studying Baltimore City, not because I represent it, but because a lot of Howard County money went there, and because I found it just to be criminal what they are not doing for those kids when there are answers and they're ignoring them. And it just made me furious. Project Baltimore does a great job in pointing out some of the insanities. But when you have something like that, that is an area where the state and others need to have more control. Frankly, I think you're going to have to put it in receivership before it will actually be able to be fixed. But I think that what the school board, what Chowdhury was trying to do was to get the State Department of Education to have more control. For Baltimore City, that'd be great. But for the rest of us, we don't want that kind of control. But when you make laws for systems that are so disparate, it doesn't work very well. And I do think it'll come back.
So you mentioned that you've been going to the school board meetings and you were more impressed than you thought you would be with some of the decisions and votes they've been making. What are some of the things that you think that could be improved or that you'd want to change?
That gets down into the weeds. That might, at this point, what I would like to do is, I think what I would bring to the school board is to ask more questions, more detailed questions, and I understand what happened with this whole bus fiasco, The board had tried to put the vote off, but they were told, no, you can't do that. I know enough not to let them tell me that. And I think the board now knows that they need to be a little bit more vigilant, but it is hard when you're dealing with the professionals who tell you one thing. So that's one of the things, just asking more questions, being sure that we're doing what's right. And the other thing is more global. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to, should I win, is being able to visit the schools and see for myself what's going on, go to schools in other parts of the county as well as my own. There are just a lot of things that parents have been unhappy about, I think. What some of the things that are being taught are questionable. I know obviously the LGBTQ issue is very hard on, particularly I know the Muslims in Montgomery County. You had a huge demonstration, and they have serious religious problems with what is being taught. My main problem is the pictures. I don't know if you've looked at some of those books. I think all you have to do is show those pictures to the audience, whoever, and they would agree that they're totally improper to be in schools. But that's something that maybe what they want to do is to teach kids to treat everyone with respect, regardless of differences. So why don't they simply train the parents all about LGBTQ and then let them handle their kids the way they want to and tell them, look, you're in charge of this, but if your child does become bullying someone on this basis, they will face serious consequences, but then they have to follow through. So it's a tough issue, but those are the kinds of issues, and the CRT and not teaching the basics is probably the biggest issue. Yeah. And I think that needs to be given more focus. It's nice. I mean, everyone likes the fact that Howard County schools have a lot of bells and whistles, and we do. And we do teach art and music and a whole bunch of other things. But we don't teach surfing or something like California does, I understand. But all of that cannot supersede teaching kids to read and write and do math, particularly to do math. And I think that's gotten lost along the way. And to the extent that I would have any influence on that, I think that's something that parents would definitely want me to focus on.
You know, I said the exact same thing that you said. I think literally today to my personal trainer, we were talking about this issue of all these DEI and LGBTQ trainings are all basically saying the same thing, which is just be a decent human being to people, right? Treat people with respect, which you can just tell kids that without going into all the details, right?
Exactly.
But I want to back up to the busing issue, which is, I don't know if everyone's been following it. I know I have, and it's very reminiscent of what was going on in Anne Arundel County last year. So can you go in a little bit more detail for people who might not have been following what's going on?
I just read a lengthy article in it in my newsletter. What happened is the first thing was Howard County decided to start schools later so that particularly high schoolers could sleep in an extra half hour. That is something that we wanted to do for a long time. It was a good thing, but it compressed the timing, which means that all of the bus routes got compressed. They had been having issues with our local contractors, primarily because there were not enough drivers. We were short 98 drivers at some point. So they did an RFP. They decided to cancel all of the contracts of the local vendors, which some of the contracts went out to 2027, but they just arbitrarily canceled them. And the RFP, they hired a company called Zoom out of California. And one other company, Tip Top, I think, in the state. The local vendors sued, and as a result, the county made a compromise and rehired a bunch of them. But the big part of it was with Zoom, a California company that is very new to school bus. They have a big company that does other things. But within the last year or two, they have contracted with 6 or 7 different school districts to provide this new service and to try and keep up with all of that new services all coming at the same time didn't make a lot of sense. And there was also enough on the internet to show that they didn't always do what they said they were going to do. So that was always a question. And a lot of people were unhappy that they hired Zoom. But I think that the most serious problem, and it was very interesting, the last school board meeting went on at length about this, and Marana was there and people spoke. And the board really questioned him on this. But when our people, we were doing the routing, and our people, our department gave routes to Zoom and they practiced them. However, 2 days before school started, they realized the routes were wrong and they gave Zoom all brand new routes and on paper, not online or not electronically. And you can imagine what that did to the first day of school. I mean, kids waited forever. There were a bunch of places where kids didn't get picked up, and there are all kinds of stories. And there are still, at the end of that first week, there were 20 different routes that were not going to be serviced. And most of them had 2 and 3 schools that they went to. And we still have about 10 of these routes, multi-school routes, that are not going to be serviced. They're working hard to fix it, but it simply wasn't good. It's a failure of leadership within our school system. And I just have a different perspective. Again, it's amazing what a private perspective, how it can differ from a government perspective. To me, you look at first, the other thing that we did was to require kids, 3,500 kids now have to walk further, most of whom are kindergartners who now have to walk up to a mile to get to school, and along roads like St. John's Lane, places that I wouldn't want my child walking. But it seems to me that this is one of the main safety obligations of the school systems to get the kids to school. Mm-hmm. And we don't have enough bus drivers. You could get enough bus drivers. All you need to do is up the salary, pay them $50 an hour if you have to, because of the importance of it. The issue is, of course, then you have to cut back someplace else. And bureaucracies do not like to cut bureaucracies. And that's unfortunate, because you make the tough choices. And if you really care about the kids, to me, that's something that you do when you're looking to get them to school.
It just seems incredible that they made those changes at the last minute, because, of course, it's kind of hard to imagine that anyone would be able to respond so quickly.
Yeah, and Zoom didn't have enough bus drivers to begin with. They flew some in from another state. They didn't all make it, but there was a real problem with drivers as well.
So historically, when I first came to Montgomery County, we were very proud of the fact that Montgomery County had the best school in the state, or the best, the most highest scores, test scores, and what have you. I detected something of a wry smile there, Trent, because forgive me. Since then, I'm actually dating myself. Since then, Howard County has consistently leaped ahead of Montgomery County, and is really the top performing. So while we were talking about Baltimore City on one side, Howard County is very much sort of a leader. What are your thoughts about how do you maintain that, and how do you kind of not fall into the trap that Montgomery County fell into of basically not becoming as productive a school system?
Well, a lot has to do with the population too. Montgomery County, my cat needs to be taped to the wall. Montgomery County grew a lot faster, and a lot of people came out from the city where the school systems had not been up to the same standards. Carroll County has a very good school system too, and I represented those two counties in the legislature. I think that Howard County, because it has parents who are willing to be very involved, and part of it dates back to the redistricting that happened several years ago, when the department came out telling Howard County that they needed to move 7,000 students from one school to another. Now, obviously you have to redistrict when there's an imbalance and too many kids in one school, not enough in another. But 7,000 kids did not need to be moved, and the parents were absolutely livid. The rationale behind that was that they needed to have socioeconomic integration, which is part and parcel of the CRT. And to my mind, extraordinarily insulting to kids who are, most of the schools in Howard County are good, but to say to somebody who's in a school that they consider, low performing, well, you have to be with, rich white kids over here so that you can learn. It's just it's just wrong. And so they fought hard against that and got the number from 7,000 down to a little over 2,000. So there was I think, a pretty good victory. And knowing that that's in the background, I think that the parents are willing to step up and be proactive. And there are a lot of different groups in this county and all over who are working to be sure that we keep parents informed.
So you mentioned earlier that the school board actually controls more of the budget than the county executive in Howard County.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of parents who've started to really get involved have been looking at, well, where is my taxpayer money going? Because clearly it's not towards stuff that's making our kids smarter. Is there a budget that you've been able to see in Howard County and where that money is currently being spent?
Yeah, I looked at the budget, and just like any budget, just like when I looked at the state budget, it's very, very hard to really know what they're paying for, even in the detailed budget. That's another thing. I'm hoping that should I win, I'll be able to ask enough questions and get enough information to really see if and where we have fat. The list of employees, people employed by the department, I found interesting. And again, I really think that the administration in Howard County, and I'm sure pretty much statewide, is bloated. It's overloaded, and I think that it could easily be slimmed down. You hate to fire people, but you need to have more teachers. You need to have the people who are in the schools hold the most important place in the school system. In fact, believe it or not, back in 2010, when I was sort of the sacrificial lamb to run against our incumbent executive, I looked at the budget of the school system, and it occurred to me that teachers were getting short shrift, that they were not being paid as much as administrators, and therefore, if they wanted to make more money, they had to leave teaching and go into the administration, which I think it sends a wrong signal. And I also think that teachers are suffering from a lot of what's going on as much as anybody, and they're very afraid to speak up about anything that's happening, and that's unfortunate. So yeah, I would like to know more about the budget, but right now I can't really tell you this is wrong and that's wrong.
Right. So another tie between, your life as a legislator and now hopefully your future career as a Board of Education member is Kerwin, right? And,
yes.
and that blueprint for education. So the paying for it by each county, I know Montgomery County, they upped their property taxes, but a little bit more into how that ties into or ties the hands of the Board of Education, if at all. Can you talk a little bit about the tie between Kerwin and your role on the Board of Ed?
Yeah, I was intimately involved with Kerwin from the get-go, and the bill got worse the longer it stayed around. And I have, just let me talk about the fact that I have problems with it for a couple of reasons. One is counties aren't going to be able to afford it. That's probably the bottom line. And the second thing is, in fact, I actually took notes of it because I thought it was, yeah, okay. Money is not the answer. We learned that when we did Thornton a number of years ago. And it takes a long-term view. Children are not going to be benefiting from Kerwin, even if everything they planned does actually work. And taking a long-term view also makes it more difficult for the plan to get implemented because people change and ideas change and they can make laws change. And finally, my biggest problem, and probably the most important issue to me in education, is that they totally ignored school choice. And that is a direct result of Maryland being in the clutches of a very, very strong teachers union. And they absolutely brought no kind of learning situations other than public schools. Public schools are great, but we need to have choices. I mean, this was one of my issues for years. And back when I first became interested, I was on the same side as all of my liberal friends for a simple reason. Take the COVID. Parents in Howard County who had money could get their kids out stop from going online. They did. They would put them in private schools or create pods. They had the money to make choices, whereas the poor kids in Baltimore City and elsewhere of low-income families didn't have any choice at all. And you talk about equity, that's not even close to being equitable. And one other comment I want to make on choice is that we do have some charter schools in Baltimore City, but those are limited. And we do have what has been described as the worst charter school law in the country, which keeps some of the really, really good companies from coming into Maryland. And that's unfortunate. I have a niece who teaches in one, and they have a waiting list that's twice as long as the number of slots that they have. And that indicates there is a need. We also have a voucher program called Boost. I never can remember what that stands for, but I was on appropriations, and our chairman, Maggie McIntosh, every year she would cut the budget, and then she would insert language into the bill that would essentially end the program, saying that no one could be a student unless they were a sibling of somebody already going there, that we would run out of eventually. Fortunately, the Senate would take that language out. This year, I was really surprised that Governor Moore did what he did. And I read his book, and he was literally saved by being able to go to there was one school, one private school, and then into a military school, which really made his life completely different. And he was a supporter of school choice. And yet, for some reason, whoever was influencing him, he came out to cut the Boost budget. And I always have to say, I am really proud of Senate President Bill Ferguson, a Democrat, and maybe the only Democrat I've ever heard come out in support of Boost, in support of this kind of school choice. And the money was not cut. So those are the kinds of things that education savings accounts, money following the child. It's being done all over the country and everywhere. If you look at the statistics globally, it works. Not every school is better than every public school at all, but by and large, giving parents the choice of where and how their kids can learn works.
Absolutely.
Now, individual counties have some discretion in allowing for charter schools in their county. So there are a number of counties that have charters. Montgomery County, we don't have any charters.
Neither does Howard.
Neither does Howard. So I guess this is a softball question, but what would your approach be on consideration of a charter application in Howard County? Obviously, you have to look at the specific merits, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would. And again, Howard County, it has very good schools. And again, I would get a much better information on that if I'm on the school board for a while. But I would look at it and obviously evaluate its ability to provide the services that it says it's going to provide, and see if need is another one that might be in it. I probably might have a leaning toward approving it, but not if it wasn't the right thing to do.
Understood.
So back to the campaigning side for a second. I know you said you haven't made a formal announcement yet, but do you have kind of a rough date in mind? Is there going to be a fundraiser that people will be able to go out and help you and support you?
Yes. And I was looking towards September. It's a very busy month, maybe early October, but I like to get a little bit closer to November, because to tell people I'm running for a seat that won't be elected till more than a year from now, it's a little bit of a harder sell. So pretty soon. And if I had one, I would tell you the date and the time and how much, but not yet.
You know, I'm hearing a Halloween party fundraiser.
I'd have to think that one over.
Mark, what else you got before we go to plugs?
Well, I did think it's a unique. Have there been other delegates who have run for school board?
No, I always do things backwards.
It does seem that does happen the other way,
Yes,
but
yes,
has
it
it?
does. But in my perspective, I feel that I, in particular, as a Republican, have far greater ability to influence, hopefully in a positive way, the school board than I ever did in the legislature. The only real value I provided in the legislature was my newsletter, which I do think was valuable. But Republicans, we can get bills passed, but not bills that really matter, not bills of substance. Although I wanted to say I was hopeful, but that's hard. There's a bill that Kathy Shalega had last year, and she's going to have it again, that would address transgender participation in athletics, and her bill would prevent that in junior varsity and varsity intramural games, because those are the ones where the winning is substantive. And that's something that I think a lot of liberals agree with, not necessarily our legislature, but a number. It's an issue that I think most people with common sense would agree.
Yeah, but they'll never say it out loud, at least not here. Are you worried at all about the teachers union coming after you, or trying to send somebody, run somebody against you, just because they are so powerful in the state?
I wouldn't say I'm worried. I'd say that I consider that a possibility, but I forgot. I started to tell you back in 2010, I got off the track because I looked at the situation of teachers and said that they should make more money. I actually had the endorsement of the Howard County Teachers Association, and they knew that I supported school choice, but it was, they were trying to be a little more nonpartisan. It really isn't possible, because most of their issues are not issues that Republicans would agree with, but we'll see.
It was a saner time in 2010.
But there's a tendency, is there not, there's a tendency for the questionnaires to be incredibly precise about what they ask for. Yes.
You know how many questionnaires I filled out last time? I think maybe the Baltimore Sun and one or two others, because there were so many and they were so detailed. It wasn't worth my time. They clearly were looking for people who answered it right, and that they weren't looking for information. So, and with an incumbent, you can tell what my positions are.
It is definitely helpful to have a voting record.
Right, yes, but it can also be attacked.
That too. So we're on to the point where we do our plugs. I know the first major one that we're doing is that one of our fan favorite guests, Governor Bob Ehrlich, is having a salute to Ehrlich hosted by the state party on October 12th. And I believe that's at the BWI Hilton, BWI something. So go ahead, get your tickets, and buy tickets.
It is the BWI Hilton.
See, got it right the first time.
I worked for Governor Ehrlich for 4 years as Deputy Secretary of Transportation. Then I ran the Transportation Authority. It was wonderful. He was a great governor.
Yes. So definitely come out and support the state party, support the governor. And let's see what else is there plug. The Young Republicans are having our first ever legislative summit, and that's going to be on October 7th at Wisp Resort in Garrett County. Registration is free, but that is only due to the generosity of our sponsors, which do not exist yet, but you could be one. So go to mdyrs.com to register for that or a sponsor. There are opportunities for our sponsors to speak, so reach out to me if you have any questions on that. What else can we plug? Tomorrow, we are doing one final toast and salute to Katja Bullock, who we lost last month and who we miss dearly. So come out to Mama Lucia's and Olney at 6:30 p.m. for that. And
we're going to have a great big collage where people can sign
yes,
the collage.
Yes. It's going to be a busy fall and a busy campaign season. So, that's what Labor Day is. It's the intro to campaign season. What else you got, Mark? Anything else to plug?
I think you've hit all the major highlights. So thank you, Jackie.
Awesome. Trent, anything going on in Howard County? Anything else we should know about?
All kinds of things.
Put you on the spot there.
But another school board meeting this week.
So if you guys are interested in what the current school board's doing and why Trent would be a great addition to said school board, go out to the school board meeting, check that out, get involved. Now is as good a time as any to get involved as parents. It's so important. Well, Trent, thank you so much for joining us.
Jackie, one more thing. Nicola Ambrose is doing a fundraiser with Representative Waltz on the 14th of September in Perry Hall. Go to mdgop.org for details on that. For that
Awesome.
one.
Thank you, Dwight. All right. Well, it's good to be back. Thank you all for joining us. And we will be back next week with another guest. I don't know who, so your guess is as good as mine. Have a great night, everybody.
Right. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing we forgot to plug. Vivek Ramaswamy, PG County Lincoln Reagan dinner is October 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
And Wycomico County on the 23rd of September has Dr. Ben Carson.
Yes. Awesome. Lots of dinners, busy fall.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.